Thursday morning started like any other day in my 41 years of existence, which is to say, it started with burnt toast and the sound of my wife Marcy pretending to care about our marriage. "Sean, did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning?" she called from upstairs, her voice carrying that particular tone that suggested I'd already failed at something I didn't know I was supposed to do. I scraped the charcoal off what used to be bread and wondered when exactly I'd become the kind of man who measured his worth in completed errands. "Which dry cleaning?" I called back, knowing full well this was a trap. "The blue dress, for tonight's dinner." "Right, the dinner with the girls, Jenny and Fiona, her two enablers who giggled like teenagers whenever Troy Franklin's name came up in conversation. Troy, the local tech CEO, with his oily charm and his habit of treating everyone like they were auditioning for the privilege of his attention. "Thought you were working late tonight," I said when Marcy appeared in the kitchen, already dressed in her corporate creative outfit, the kind of carefully casual, expensive clothes that were supposed to look effortless, but probably cost more than my monthly salary as operations manager at the warehouse. Plans changed. She grabbed her coffee without looking at me. "Jenny made reservations at that new place downtown." Our 15-year-old daughter Katie wandered into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder, and gave me the look that said she knew something I didn't. Katie had always been sharp, sharper than either of her parents, and lately she'd been watching Marcy with the kind of suspicious attention usually reserved for politicians during election season. "Mom's always working late these days," Katie said, grabbing an apple from the counter. "Must be some really important projects." Marcy's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "Business is busy, honey. That's good for all of us." "Sure it is." Katie's voice carried just enough sarcasm to make Marcy's jaw tighten. After they both left, Katie to school, Marcy to whatever she was calling work these days, I sat in the kitchen and tried to remember when my wife had started lying to me with such casual expertise. The signs had been there for months: the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in buying expensive lingerie that I never got to see her wear. My phone buzzed. A text from Pete, my only real friend left after years of Marcy systematically alienating anyone who might tell me the truth about my life. "Beer tonight? You look like you need it." I was typing back when I noticed Marcy's iPad sitting on the counter, still logged into her email. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not ashamed of it either. When someone's been making you feel crazy for months, sometimes you need proof that you're still sane. The hotel booking confirmation was right there in her inbox, dated for last Tuesday, the night she'd claimed to be working on a presentation until midnight. Franklin T. Losh guest, Wheeler M. Losh Executive Suite/Hyatt downtown. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. Troy Franklin, the same Troy who'd been circling Marcy like a shark ever since she started working on his company's marketing campaign 6 months ago. The same Troy who always seemed to find excuses to call her at home, his voice oozing through the phone speaker like oil on water. "If she's working late, she must be earning overtime in hotel rooms," I muttered to the empty kitchen. The next morning, I was ready. Marcy came downstairs in her robe, hair still messy from sleep, looking almost like the woman I'd married 16 years ago. Almost. "Morning," she said, reaching for the coffee pot. "Morning." I waited until she'd taken her first sip. "How was dinner with the girls last night?" "Good. Jenny's going through a rough patch with her divorce." "That's too bad. Where'd you end up going?" "That new Italian place. I told you." I nodded and took a sip of my own coffee. "Funny thing, I called the Hyatt yesterday looking for you. Thought maybe you'd left your phone there Tuesday night when you were working so late." Her hand froze around the coffee cup. I watched her face cycle through confusion, realization, and finally a kind of cold calculation that I'd never seen before. "Sean, they said you'd checked out Wednesday morning, with Troy. Executive suite." I kept my voice conversational, like we were discussing the weather. "Dinner with the girls, huh? Funny how the hotel thinks you were with Troy." The coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered against the kitchen floor, brown liquid spreading across the white tiles like a stain that would never come out. "We need to talk," she said. "Yeah," I said, smiling for the first time in months. "I bet you do." The next evening, I came home from work to find Marcy sitting in our living room with Jenny and Fiona, all three of them wearing the kind of serious expressions usually reserved for funerals or tax audits. They'd arranged themselves on the couch like a tribunal, and I could practically smell the desperation in the air. "Sean," Marcy said, her voice artificially calm. "Sit down, please." I stayed standing. "This should be good." Jenny, a nervous woman with the kind of laugh that made dogs bark, cleared her throat. "There's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. Mind if I record this? For clarity. Fiona, who usually treated me like furniture, suddenly found her voice. That's not necessary. Oh, I think it is. I hit record and set the phone on the coffee table. So, Marcy, want to explain how you ended up in a hotel room with Troy Franklin while I thought you were working late? The silence stretched until Jenny cracked like an egg. It's not what you think, she blurted out. They were just… Jenny! Marcy's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Jenny was already falling apart. I can't do this anymore, Marcy. He deserves to know. Know what? I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew. I'd known for months, really. I'd just been too much of a coward to face it. She's been seeing Troy, Jenny whispered, for almost a year. Fiona shot Jenny a look that could have melted steel. You said you were going to handle this. Handle what? I asked. The affair, or getting caught. Marcy finally found her voice. Sean, it's complicated. Is it? Because it seems pretty simple to me. My wife has been fucking her boss and using her friends to cover for her. I looked at Jenny and Fiona. How many times did you lie for her? How many fake girls' nights? We were trying to protect you, Fiona said weakly. From what? The truth? From getting hurt, Jenny said. I laughed, and it came out bitter enough to make them all flinch. Too late for that. Marcy stood up, trying to regain control of the situation. Sean, if you'll just let me explain. Explain what? How you've been making me look like an idiot for the past year. How you've been taking hotel trips with Troy, while I'm here helping Katie with her homework and wondering why my wife doesn't want to touch me anymore. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said. It just did. Bullshit. I picked up my phone and stopped the recording. Affairs don't just happen, Marcy. They're planned, coordinated. They require scheduling and lies and friends who are willing to help cover your tracks. I looked at Jenny and Fiona. So who gets the hotel loyalty points? Do you split them, or does Troy keep them all? Jenny started crying. Fiona stared at her hands. Marcy just looked angry, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. What do you want, Sean? Marcy asked. I want you to tell me the truth, all of it. So she did. Or at least, she told me enough of it. The late-night strategy sessions that turned into drinks. The business trips that weren't really business. The executive suite that Troy kept on retainer for his important meetings. The way he made her feel appreciated, valued, desired. He listens to me, she said, as if that justified everything. So did I said. For 16 years. It's different with him. I bet it is. He's got money. Her face flushed. It's not about money, isn't it? When's the last time you worried about a mortgage payment, Marcy? When's the last time you had to choose between fixing the car and buying groceries? That's not fair. Fair? I looked around the room at the three women who'd spent months making me feel like I was losing my mind. You want to talk about fair? I walked to the window and looked out at our neighborhood, modest houses with modest problems, where people worked real jobs and tried to pay their bills and didn't usually have to worry about their spouses conducting year-long affairs with their wealthy bosses. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to them. I'm going to take Katie, and we're going to stay at Pete's for a few days while I figure out what comes next. You three can sit here and plan your next lie. Sean, wait, but I was already walking upstairs to pack a bag. I had work to do. Pete's apartment smelled like pizza and motor oil, which was somehow more honest than my own house had felt in months. He cracked open 2 beers and listened while I told him everything, occasionally shaking his head or muttering curses under his breath. She's made you the town punchline, man, he said when I finished. You gonna take that? What choice do I have? You could fight back. With what? A good lawyer costs money I don't have. Pete grinned, and I recognized the expression from our high school days when he was about to suggest something that would probably get us in trouble. Who said anything about lawyers? That's how I found myself sitting in my truck outside the Hyatt downtown on Thursday night, camera ready, waiting for Troy and Marcy to make their weekly appearance. I didn't have to wait long. They walked through the lobby like they owned the place, Troy's hand resting possessively on the small of Marcy's back. He moved like a man who'd never paid for his own drinks or his own wife. She laughed at something he said, throwing her head back in a way she hadn't laughed with me in years. I got it all on video. The handsy elevator wait, the keycard swipe, the way Troy looked around the lobby like he was marking his territory. When I got back to Pete's, I uploaded the video to my laptop and created a private group message with Jenny, Fiona, and a few other mutual friends. I kept the message simple. Thought you should see what Marcy's been up to. My phone started ringing within minutes. Sean, you can't do this. Jenny's voice was panicked. People will see. That's the idea. This will ruin her. She ruined herself. I'm just documenting it. By morning, the video had spread beyond my original group. Someone had shared it with someone else, who'd shared it with someone else, and suddenly half the town knew that Marcy Wheeler was having an affair with Troy Franklin. I was having coffee at the diner near work when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Wheeler, this is Patricia Franklin, Troy's wife. I almost choked on my coffee. Mrs. Franklin. I think we should talk. We met at a coffee shop across town, away from prying eyes. Patricia Franklin was nothing like I'd expected. No trophy wife here, just a tired-looking woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and the kind of quiet dignity that comes from years of practice. How long have you known? She asked. Officially, 3 days. Unofficially, months. She nodded. I've suspected for a while. Troy's not as clever as he thinks he is. What are you going to do? What any smart woman would do. Take him for everything he's worth. She smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut diamonds. You can keep the gold digger, Troy. I'll keep the house. What about Marcy's job? What about it? Troy won't be in a position to protect anyone once I'm done with him. That afternoon, Patricia Franklin walked into Troy's office building just as Marcy was leaving for lunch. I wasn't there to see it, but Jenny called me within the hour, her voice shaking. Patricia confronted Marcy in the lobby, she said. In front of everyone, it was horrible. Define horrible. She called her a home-wrecking slut and threw her coffee at her. Did she hit her? No, but then it wasn't horrible. It was justice. That evening, I was loading groceries into my truck when I spotted Troy's BMW in the parking lot. He was sitting behind the wheel, talking on his phone, gesturing angrily. When he saw me, he ended the call and got out of his car. We need to talk, he said, walking over. Do we? This has gone far enough. I finished loading my groceries and closed the tailgate. Has it? Because from where I'm standing, it's just getting started. He stepped closer, trying to use his height to intimidate me. You don't know what you're dealing with. Sure I do. I'm dealing with a middle-aged man who thinks his money makes him bulletproof. I stepped around him to get to my driver's door. Newsflash, Troy. It doesn't. He grabbed my arm. I'm warning you. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Careful, Troy. That's my cheating hand. He let go like I was on fire. Smart choice, I said, getting into my truck. Give my regards to your wife. Oh wait, she's not your wife anymore, is she? As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot like a man who just realized he wasn't the main character in his own story. When I got back to Pete's apartment, there was an envelope tucked under the windshield wiper of my truck. No return address, just my name written in block letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message. Back off or else. I showed it to Pete, who read it and started laughing. What's so funny? They spelled your name wrong. It's S-E-A-N, not S-H-A-N. You'd think they'd at least spell my name right, I said, but I wasn't laughing. Someone was getting desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I called in sick to work. Then I drove to the hardware store and bought supplies for a little home improvement project. Troy Franklin lived in one of those modern houses that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never actually lived in a house. All glass and sharp angles and expensive materials that required expensive maintenance. The kind of place that screamed, I have money, to anyone driving by. His housekeeper, Maria, had been cleaning houses in our neighborhood for 15 years. I'd helped her move her couch once when her son was deployed overseas. She remembered. Mr. Sean, she said when I knocked on Troy's back door. What are you doing here? Troy asked me to take a look at some plumbing issues in his office. Said you'd let me in. She frowned. He didn't tell me. Probably forgot. You know how busy he's been lately. I held up my toolbox. Won't take long. Maria hesitated, then stepped aside. He's at work until 6. Perfect. This'll be done by 5. Troy's home office was exactly what I'd expected. Leather furniture, expensive electronics, and a wall of awards and photos that testified to his own importance. His desk was the size of a small aircraft carrier, covered with papers and files that probably contained more money than I'd see in my lifetime. I got to work. First, I removed the doorknob from the inside of the office door and replaced it with one that could only be opened from the outside. Then I adjusted the toilet in his private bathroom so that it would overflow every time someone flushed it. Nothing dramatic, just a slow, steady leak that would eventually ruin his expensive hardwood floors. I saved the best for last. Troy's prized possession was his vintage Mustang, which he kept in his three-car garage like it was a piece of art. I didn't touch the engine or do anything that would cause an accident. Instead, I filled the interior with live crickets from the pet store, about 200 of them, and programmed the car alarm to go off every hour starting at 3 a.m. Then I left a note on his desk. Maybe call a professional next time, like you do with my wife. That night, I was having dinner with Katie at Pete's when my phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was from Troy, his voice tight with rage. "You son of a bitch. I know this was you." The second was from Marcy. "Sean, please call me. We need to talk." The third was from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Wheeler, this is Detective Morrison with the city police. We need to discuss some vandalism that occurred today." I called Detective Morrison back. "Mr. Wheeler, Troy Franklin filed a complaint saying you broke into his house and vandalized his property." "That's interesting. Does he have any proof?" "He says you're the only one with motive." "Motive for what? I haven't been to his house." "He says you've been harassing him about an affair with your wife." "Detective, my wife is having an affair with Mr. Franklin. That's not harassment, that's a fact. If he's having problems with his house, maybe he should call a contractor." And there was a pause. "Mr. Wheeler, where were you between noon and 4 p.m. today?" "At home, with my daughter. She's been sick." I looked at Katie, who nodded solemnly. "We watched movies all afternoon. Can anyone else verify that?" "My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She brought us soup around 2 p.m. Another pause. "Mr. Wheeler, I'd advise you to stay away from Mr. Franklin and his property." "Absolutely, Detective. I wouldn't want to interfere with his pest control problems." After I hung up, Katie grinned at me. "Crickets, 200 of them. Dad, that's genius." At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a video, shaky footage of Troy Franklin in his pajamas, standing in his driveway, trying to turn off his car alarm while crickets hopped around his feet. The person filming was laughing so hard the camera kept shaking. The text said, "Your neighbor posted this on the neighborhood app. It's gone viral." I watched the video 3 times before I went back to sleep, smiling for the first time in months. But I wasn't done yet. The storm hit on Friday night, one of those autumn thunderstorms that knock out power lines and make you grateful for solid roofs and warm houses. I was at Pete's, helping Katie with her math homework when the lights went out. "Great," Pete muttered, feeling around for flashlights. That's when we heard the car doors slamming outside. I looked through the window and saw 2 figures walking up the driveway. Troy and another man I didn't recognize. They were both wearing dark clothes and moving with the kind of purpose that made my stomach clench. "Katie, go to Pete's bedroom and lock the door," I said quietly. "Dad, now." Pete appeared with a flashlight and a baseball bat. "Friends of yours?" "Not exactly." The knock on the door was more like pounding. "Wheeler, open up." I looked at Pete. "Call 911. "Already did. Lines are down." "Wheeler, we know you're in there." I recognized the second voice now. It was the private investigator Troy had hired to follow me around. A thin man with nervous eyes who'd been parked outside my work for the past week. "What do you want?" I called through the door. "We want to talk." "So talk. Open the door." "I don't think so." That's when they tried to break it down. Pete's front door was solid oak, installed by a man who believed in doing things right the first time. It held, barely. "Back door," Pete whispered, and we ran through the house. But they'd thought of that too. The PI was already there, trying to jimmy the lock with a credit card. "Amateurs," Pete muttered, and grabbed a pot of cold coffee from the counter. When the PI finally got the door open, Pete doused him with the entire pot. The man screamed and stumbled backward, slipping on the wet deck and going down hard. "That's for breaking and entering," Pete said. Meanwhile, Troy had finally gotten through the front door and was stumbling around in the dark, calling my name like we were old friends. "Sean, let's be reasonable about this." "Reasonable," I called back. "You broke into my friend's house. I just want to talk." "So did I, remember? When I found out you were screwing my wife?" I could hear him moving through the living room, knocking into furniture. Pete had prepared for this. We'd spent the afternoon rigging the house with what he called home security measures, and what I called booby traps worthy of a cartoon. Troy found the first one when he walked into the kitchen. The paint can pendulum caught him right in the chest, sending him sprawling backward into the hallway. "Son of a bitch," he yelled. "Home Alone, but for adults with divorce lawyers," I muttered. The second trap got him when he tried to go upstairs looking for me. Pete had greased the bottom 3 steps with cooking oil. Troy's feet went out from under him, and he slid back down, landing in a heap at the bottom. "This is assault," he yelled. "This is trespassing," I yelled back. That's when Marcy showed up. I heard her voice through the broken front door. "Troy? Troy, are you okay?" She picked her way through the debris, using her phone's flashlight to navigate. When she saw Troy sitting at the bottom of the stairs, holding his ribs and glaring at everything, she rushed to his side. "Baby, what happened? Your psycho husband happened. I'm not the one who broke into someone's house," I said, coming down the stairs carefully. Marcy looked up at me, and in the blue glow of her phone's flashlight, she looked like a stranger. "Sean, this has to stop, does it? Because you two seem pretty committed to making my life hell. We never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen? Were you planning to tell me eventually, or were you just going to keep lying until I figured it out?" She stood up, leaving Troy to nurse his bruises. "I was going to tell you. When? Soon. Bullshit." She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume, the expensive stuff that Troy probably bought her. "Sean, we can work this out. We don't have to destroy each other." "We? There is no we, Marcy. There's you and your boyfriend, and there's me and my daughter. Katie needs her mother. Katie needs a mother she can respect." That's when Marcy tried to play her last card. She moved closer, put her hand on my chest, looked up at me with the expression that used to make me forget my own name. "Sean," she whispered, "I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go back to the way things were." For just a moment, I felt the old pull. The memory of who we used to be, before the lies and the betrayal and the slow death of everything we'd built together. Then Katie's voice cut through the darkness. "Dad, don't listen to her." I turned and saw my daughter standing in the hallway, holding Pete's baseball bat and looking at her mother with an expression of pure disgust. "She's lying," Katie said. "She's always lying." Marcy's face crumpled. "Katie, honey, don't call me honey. You haven't called me honey since you started screwing him." Katie pointed the bat at Troy, who was trying to stand up without putting weight on his ribs. "Katie!" Marcy's voice was sharp with shock. "What? You think I don't know what's going on? You think I'm stupid? Of course not. Then stop treating me like I am." That's when the neighbors started arriving. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door was first, followed by the Johnsons from across the street, then the college kids from the duplex on the corner. Word had spread through the neighborhood that something was happening at Pete's house, and in a small community where everyone knows everyone else's business, that was better than cable TV. Someone had brought a portable radio, and the local news was reporting on the storm damage throughout the city. Power was out in most neighborhoods, but apparently the drama at Pete's house was providing its own entertainment. "Is that Troy Franklin, Mrs.?" Johnson asked, shining her flashlight at the man sitting on Pete's stairs. "The one from the video with the crickets?" her husband added. Troy's face went red. "This is a private matter. Not when you break into someone's house, it isn't," Pete said, appearing with an ice pack for his knuckles. That's when the police finally arrived. 2 officers with heavy-duty flashlights and the kind of tired expressions that suggested they'd been dealing with storm-related calls all night. They took one look at the crowd in Pete's front yard and the broken door and the 2 men who clearly didn't belong there and started asking questions. "Who lives here?" the first officer asked. "I do," Pete said. "These 2 broke in." The officer turned his flashlight on Troy and the PI, who was still dripping coffee and looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "That true? It's complicated," Troy said. "It's really not," I said. "They broke down the door." "We were trying to resolve a dispute," the PI said. "By breaking into someone's house?" the second officer asked. "They've been harassing my client," Troy said, pointing at me. "Your client?" The first officer looked confused. "I hired him to investigate Mr. Wheeler," Troy explained. "Why?" "Because he's been stalking me." The officer turned to me. "Is that true?" "Officer, this man has been having an affair with my wife for almost a year. When I found out about it and filed for divorce, he started threatening me. Tonight he broke into my friend's house." "That's not what happened," Marcy said, stepping forward. "Ma'am, and you are his wife." The officer looked around the group. Me, Marcy, Troy, the PI, Pete, Katie, and about 15 neighbors who were watching the whole thing like it was a live-action soap opera. "This is a domestic situation," he said to his partner. "With breaking and entering," the partner replied. "And trespassing," Pete added. "And assault," Troy said, holding his ribs. Self-defense, I corrected. The first officer sighed. Everyone who doesn't live here needs to leave, now. But, Troy started. Now. As the crowd began to disperse, Mrs. Rodriguez called out, Sean, you let us know if you need anything. This isn't over, Troy said as the officers escorted him toward his car. Yeah, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. It is. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind the kind of crisp, clean air that makes everything look newly washed. I stood in Pete's front yard, surveying the damage to his door and thinking about how to pay for the repairs, when Katie came outside with 2 cups of coffee. Dad? Yeah? Are you okay? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. 15 years old, with her mother's eyes, but her own fierce intelligence, and the kind of strength that comes from watching your family fall apart and deciding you're not going down with the ship. I'm getting there. Good, because Mom's here. I turned and saw Marcy's car pulling up to the curb. She got out slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal, and walked across the yard with the careful steps of someone who knows they're not welcome. Sean, she said, we need to talk. Do we? Please. I looked at Katie, who shrugged. I'll be inside if you need backup. Thanks, kiddo. After Katie went inside, Marcy and I stood in the morning sunlight, 2 people who used to love each other trying to figure out how we'd ended up as strangers. I'm sorry, she said finally. For which part? The affair, the lies, or bringing your boyfriend to break into Pete's house? All of it. Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anymore. That's honest, at least. Sean, I know you hate me. I don't hate you, Marcy. I hate what you did. I hate what you turned us into. But I don't hate you. Then maybe we can... No. I held up my hand. We can't. Whatever we had, whatever we were, it's over. You made sure of that. Because of Troy? Because of the lies. Because you looked me in the eye for months and made me feel like I was losing my mind. Because you involved our daughter in your deception. Because when I found out the truth, instead of owning up to what you'd done, you doubled down and brought your boyfriend to terrorize my friends. She started crying then, quiet tears that might have moved me 6 months ago. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered, but it did. And now we have to live with the consequences. What happens now? Now you and Troy deal with the fact that everyone in town knows what you did. You deal with the fact that his wife is taking him for everything he's worth, and you'll probably lose your job when the dust settles. You deal with the fact that Katie doesn't trust you anymore, and it's going to take years to rebuild that relationship, if you ever can. And you? I start over. A car pulled up behind Marcy's, Troy's BMW, looking worse for wear after its cricket infestation. He got out slowly, favoring his ribs, and walked over to where we were standing. Marcy, we need to go, he said. Go where? I asked. That's none of your business, Troy said. Actually, it is. See, Marcy's still my wife until the divorce is final, and Katie's still my daughter. So where her mother goes is very much my business. The divorce will be final soon enough, Troy said. Will it? Because I hear you're having some financial difficulties. Expensive lawyers cost money. Money you might not have much longer. Troy's face went red. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Patricia Franklin seems like a smart woman. The kind of woman who probably knows where all the assets are hidden. The kind of woman who's been married to a cheater long enough to have planned for this day. That's enough, Marcy said. Is it? Because I don't think it is. I looked around the neighborhood, at Mrs. Rodriguez watering her flowers, at the Johnson kids riding their bikes, at all the normal people living their normal lives, while we stood here dealing with the wreckage of ours. You two thought you could have your cake and eat it too, I said. You thought you could sneak around behind everyone's backs and there wouldn't be consequences. You thought you were smarter than everyone else, more sophisticated, more deserving. Sean, Marcy started. But you weren't. You were just selfish, and now everyone knows it. Troy stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. You son of a bitch. What? You going to hit me? In front of my daughter? In front of the whole neighborhood? I gestured toward the windows, where I could see faces watching us. Go ahead, Troy. Show everyone what kind of man you really are. Why? For a moment, I thought he might actually do it. His face was purple with rage, his whole body trembling with the effort of holding himself back. Then Katie opened the front door. Dad? Everything okay out here? The sound of my daughter's voice seemed to deflate Troy like a punctured balloon. He looked at Katie, then at the watching neighbors, then at Marcy, who was staring at him with something that might have been disappointment. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yeah," I said, putting my arm around Katie's shoulders. "It is." We watched them drive away, Troy's BMW followed by Marcy's sedan. Two people who'd thought they were writing a love story, but had ended up as the villains in someone else's revenge tale. "So what now?" Katie asked. "Now we go home. To Mom's house? To our house. She can find somewhere else to stay." Katie grinned. "Can we change the locks?" "Already ordered new ones." "Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you." I looked down at my daughter, this fierce, intelligent young woman who'd watched her family implode and chosen to stand with the parent who'd told her the truth, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. "Come on," I said. "Let's go home." As we walked toward my truck, I could hear Mrs. Rodriguez calling to her husband, "Miguel, you missed it. Sean Wheeler just sent that cheating wife of his packing." The sound of neighborhood gossip had never sounded so sweet. 6 months later, Troy Franklin's tech company went bankrupt. The divorce settlement with Patricia had left him with nothing but debts and a reputation that made it impossible to find investors for his next venture. He moved to another state, though the rumors followed him. Marcy tried to rebuild her life, but small towns have long memories. She eventually moved to the city, where she could start over somewhere that her story wasn't common knowledge. She calls Katie every week, and sometimes Katie even answers. As for me, I bought Pete a new front door and took him out for the most expensive steak dinner I could afford. I got a promotion at work, turns out. Standing up for yourself makes people respect you more, not less. And Katie? Katie learned that sometimes the good guys do win, as long as they're willing to fight for it.